Was good. Definitely writing with other people has helped me kind of go to another level and glean from other people's talent, ideas, and I know that I'm a better writer. I feel like I'm a better writer when I'm writing with other people that I really vibe off. So I don't know. It's been a great journey for me. But it's its own art in itself, writing with other people, and it's more fun, I think, anyway.
Joel, I don't know if you want to jump in on that. I know on this last album you co-wrote a couple of songs. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, from No Other Name?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, as with what Reuben said, I think there's just a power to collaboration in the church. I think it's part of just God's makeup for how we're meant to work together as human beings, and what we're doing with the kingdom of the church. So I think there's a power to unity, and God blesses it, and it's awesome. That's not to say if you wrote a song by yourself, God's not going to bless that too, but I think there's also just something awesome about sharing and gleaning and learning. I wrote with this on this album with one of the guys who's been a great friend and part of our church for a long time, Jonas Meyer, and many of you may know. He's written a lot, I know, with Matt and others, and Reuben. And so for me, it was the first time we'd actually written together. We've been friends for many, many years. And I've watched him write all these songs with all these other guys. I was like, let's get together. And I just loved, we spent 2 days together, and it was very, just hanging out, talking most of the time, sharing about what God's doing in our lives, what we feel like God's saying. And then it was just, the songs were really just an overflow of that. It was very simple. Sometimes it can be hard work, and you've got to know when to kind of push through that and whatever. And other times I think you connect with somebody where it's just, there's just an overflow. And so that was that experience. But I've had other co-writes with people where it's like banging your head against a brick wall for 4 hours, and well, Reuben for one, he just never listens to my ideas. It's not true at all. No, sometimes it's not because it's not working. It's just because I think sometimes songwriting is a grind. I think I'm grateful. Like, songwriting never gets easier, does it? I don't know about for you guys, maybe for you, Tim, but for me, it's like every song feels like the hardest song ever to write. I think that it kind of should be that way. Like, there should be an element where our knuckles are bleeding at the end of a process sometimes, and I'm grateful when a song drops. And so with Jonas on this one, we wrote No Other Name together, and it was a bit of a grind, and it was very natural, but it was hard work. And then at the end of that process, Broken Vessels just kind of landed in a very short amount of time, and you can't. It's just like, I wish I knew why or how or whatever, but I'm just glad that in that moment we were together and willing to just share and be open and listen to each other's ideas and threw stuff out there. And at the end of the day, I always think about it, it's not really as much about, we have to put our hand to the plow and work and all the rest of it, but it's really just being like ready to catch whatever God's ready to give you. And if you're not ready to catch it, you might miss it. It's like, I don't know. I feel like our job is to kind of set sail, build the boat, do everything we can to tie down all the ropes and get the thing ready, but ultimately it's on God to breathe on the thing. And so I think songwriting, it's just like a relationship. The beauty of it is just being ready and making time for it. So it's a long-winded answer.
It's great. Matt, do you want to add to that when it comes to searching for a co-writing partner?
Yeah,
what do you look for?
Swedish people are good. You guys, you've done a lot in the world. ABBA, Volvo, IKEA, Cornerstone. By the way, good afternoon, everyone. And you may be wondering why we're all on these nice stools here. It's because I have in my contract I'll never be on a stage with Joel Huston standing up. Here is why. I'll show the people why. That's And one other announcement we forgot to say earlier. If any of you would like any popcorn or ice cream, Tim Hughes has a little apron out the back and a basket. Just put your hand up, he'll
Freshly made by myself.
Co-writing. It is. I think my approach first is what really could go wrong. I mean, you're going to hang out with someone, fellowship. You're going to dive into the Word of God together. You're going to sharpen each other creatively. You might not get a song out at the end of it, but who really, cares? All those things are worth it in itself, right? And I really believe that. Of course I want to write a song, but I have been in the room with people, I think, man, I learned so much today from the way they solved that problem or the way they did this. And we didn't even end up using that song or ever leading it anywhere, but I know I came out of that room a better friend with them, and I came out of that room, with a bigger heart of worship, and I think I grew as a craftsman of a song. So that's one thing. It kind of takes the pressure off a bit. I think another thing I would say is you look for partnerships to invest in, because there's one kind of thing you can do almost like the co-writing equivalent of speed dating. So you're like with this person for a few hours, and then you're on to another person, right, with them, and there's nothing wrong with that. My brother met his wife speed dating, so at a Christian conference. So there's nothing wrong with that. But it can. But the point is, when you might find 2 or 3 people, something really happens when we write together. There's a real good connection here. I've got people who couldn't even write a whole song on their own, but they're really helpful having in the room. They just seem to bring something, guidance, making quick judgment calls, making sure we stay on theme, all that kind of thing. So I think just find those people who you can really invest in. That's what I would say.
I'd say I think with that, because for me the songwriting, the collaboration is the sort of element to trust one another. Because I guess you said one of the downsides. What are the downsides of co-writing? I think it could be that you don't fully give your heart or yourself, or you hold something back, and actually having the confidence just to throw out the ideas, even if they feel stupid, or if you're always second guessing, what are they going to think? You're never going to fully give yourself, and that's what I think I've found as well. I write a lot with Nick Herbert's on the front here, and you build that trust and that kind of ability just to throw out an idea and not worry what they're going to think, and I think that's the key. The more you write together, you almost you have that freedom because you want the songs to capture real emotion and depth and have something that's got real heart, and it's the vulnerability of songwriting. I think you've got to try and create the space and a safe place for that to really flourish.
It's just massive. I just think it's so important to bring your best into a songwriting collaboration. And if you were going to ask a question, why is your head against a brick wall? Because sometimes I think I've been guilty of it for sure. Like, I'll withhold this idea because I really, really like it. I'm not willing to expose it in this relationship because I don't fully trust this person to cherish that, whatever. I don't know, like it's one of those things. So I think if I think about it, all the best song, experiences I've had with co-writing, it's been a willingness to actually bring the best and to really value whatever idea the other person's bringing, like your own, not just, oh, that's a good idea, but mine's better. A real sense of like, man, I can see there's gold in that, and take it. So it's something.
And also not to get lazy, because sometimes
Sure.
you can think, well, they'll finish it off.
Yeah.
And but when it's just you have to do everything. So to really bring your best and keep going.
Jared, there's also something about having a great relationship where you can trust the other person to say you can do better than that as well. And I find I do a lot of, I'm the speed dating of songwriting, and the pop-up, that's what you do. You just go, but you find the few that you can really trust when they say, that's great, but we can do better than that. When you think you've just done the best thing you've done, and they go, we can do better than that. I think you really need to trust someone to believe that and to dig deeper.
Yeah, really good, amazing answers.
Amazing answer.
It's it's a lot. I mean, a lot of songwriters in here, but I think there's a lot of worship leaders as well. Aidan, maybe you want to share a little about how you started to write songs, and do you think that as a worship leader at some point you should be trying to write songs and be a songwriter as well?
Yeah, I mean, I was writing a lot before I started worship leading, like little songs by myself, and to be honest, it was like songwriting and listening to worship music was what brought me to church. It was the thing that I felt, I guess, was the thing that I connected with the most when I first started coming to church. So for me, like, I would always be writing, whether they were good songs or not. And anyway, I used to write a lot. I used to send stuff to Joel back in the day. I'm still young, by the way, so I'm still learning. But yeah, I mean, how I started. Yeah. So I was in a band initially, and we were writing pretty rubbish songs. And then I started writing for youth, and we were just writing for Friday nights. And then we did a youth TP project in, I think, 2010. And at the time I worked on it with JD and Dean Usher, who are a lot older than me and more experienced. So like coming back to that co-writing thing, that helped me a lot because I'm still like learning so much, and to work with guys more experienced helped a lot. They brought the best out of me. So that was how I started getting into it. And then, yeah, and I think even for youth on Friday night, like I started worship leading in maybe like 2009, 2008. And there was a need a lot of the time for new songs to be written on Friday night. So I felt the responsibility to write alongside other people just for the Friday night program. So yeah, that's how I sort of started getting involved. And that, as a worship leader, I felt the need to write or to bring something fresh as often as possible.
Amazing. Just at the back of that,
Yeah.
you know, how do you go about? Because I know in our world we we expose our songs to like a songwriters board, and how do you go about like sharing? I know with songwriting sometimes it's like pouring out your heart, and then you're like exposing your heart, and someone is going to critique it and give you input. How do you go about that? And was that a challenge for you in the start to like show your songs and get critique on that?
Initially, but now I actually love it. Like I love when people say that song's not good, because it just encourages me to keep writing. And I'm surrounded by awesome guys like Reuben and Joel and at church, and I love, like, for me it's actually an awesome opportunity to get them to even listen to it. So whatever they say, I love. So
we had this in Sydney. We did this songwriting session. We had Pastor Robert Ferguson, who we all show our song lyrics to Robert, and he's a theologian, so he critiques them and makes sure that we're not lying. Our theology is correct. And with Aiden's permission, he put on the screen the first draft of a song that Aiden had just written and sent in to him. And it was an amazing experience. It was quite amazing.
yeah, it's good.
Because it had every line, it had Aiden's line, and then it had about 6 lines in red ink of like Robert's critique. It was incredible. And like you were humble to allow him to do that, because it was brutal.
Yeah, it's often the case. Yeah, no, it was good.
It's amazing. I got a question from Jared. But when it comes to producing, and do you think like that? They say something that bad sound kills good music. Do you think like a bad produced song could kill a really good song? And do you think like a average song could be like an awesome song if it's produced well?
Yeah, I think to a degree, but I think... Hold on, I had something in my left ear over here that kind of... You can to a degree. But I think to it... But there's going to be... there's plenty of songs that we've all heard that. I think you think it's a pretty bad song, but how did that go number one? Or how did it go anywhere? It's hard. It's a hard answer. I think in the Christian, for me, I've kind of come to that point where when I hear what these guys do and how they presented songs and all that stuff, it's just don't get in the way of the song. I think that's the goal of a producer, is to not be recognised at all. And it's something I've been trying to learn, and still am learning a lot about it. The great producers, you don't actually know they were there. You just know that the song was amazing. Can you make a average song sound great? Yeah, you can make it sonically sound great, but will it resonate as good as a great song that sounds not so good? But it's still a great song. I think you see all over the place these days. Stuff that is kind of produced in bedrooms, it's not technically amazing, but the song was great, or it had a lyric that resonated or something. And it went further than the one that was produced by the best people in the world. So I think it does always come back to the song.
I remember working with a producer, and he's going to do some songs, so I sent him all these demos of the songs, and he just sent them straight back. He said, just sing them again, just you and an acoustic guitar, get rid of all the instrumentation. So he wanted to hear, do they work in their rawest form? And if they do, then let's start building around it. It's a good challenge. I don't think it's necessarily always the right way forward, but I think, for me, again, often a good judge of a song is, do I want to worship with it? And after kind of a few weeks, and I'm still kind of finding, I go back to it and really resonate with it when I lead it and sing it on the piano or with the guitar.
Do you reckon it changes a bit though? Like as time changes and more people write on the computer and start with a beat, and do you reckon that it's things are changing, or are you still like going back to old school? Maybe you want to share, all of you, like how you write a song. Do you start with a lyric? Do you start with a beat? Do you start with the music?
I'd love to hear what Matt has to say about that, because you got the whole place dancing last night.
Thanks, mate.
It's just the truth, he did. It's brilliant.
I think I was trying even, but I can't seem to stay in time with the music when I do. So, yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting because with the fast tempo songs, as interesting said, I got a hit rate of about 1 in 20. So I have to write 20 before I can get one. And having said, so here's the thing: when I write on my own on acoustic, because what I'm hearing in my head sometimes doesn't actually exist. So it's like I've started intentionally writing with a couple of people who are producers and programmers, and Singing Shouts one actually. We started with a track for that, and there's the song we started with last night, and actually even going back, I remember reading an interview with Paul Simon. He's talking about the Graceland album. Obviously, he was known as a singer-songwriter. He'd be shut away in his room with his acoustic writing, and then with Graceland, they decided to do. They got obviously this kind of African beats and this whole different cultural approach, and they started writing to that. And what I love about it is that you still hear Paul Simon in it. It's still, you can hear that's Paul Simon's melody, or those lyrics are so Paul Simon. But it's got this whole thing, and obviously it was a groundbreaking album. And I think that's actually an interesting approach, isn't it? To I think the key is honestly to put yourselves in different scenarios. Because if you're just sitting in one scenario, me and my acoustic guitar in a room with a door shut, that you're going to run out of ideas. So there's so many ways you can do that. I remember saying, someone asked Sir George Martin what was the Beatles' secret, and he said, easy, as their curiosity. They were always asking, I wonder what happens if I do this, I wonder what happens if we try this. So that's why you have a song like A Day in the Life, which is 2 whole songs chopped up and put together, and somehow it shouldn't work, but it does work, and it always comes up real high in all the polls of the Beatles' best songs. And that shouldn't work, I wonder what happens if we try this, try that. So I wonder what happens if I songwrite with this person. I wonder what happens if I re-string my guitar as a high strung for a week, or I borrow a baritone. You see, you don't even have to play a different instrument to do it. I wonder what happens if I write to some programming. I wonder what happens if I try and use as few words as possible in the song. I wonder what happens if I try and use 5 words in a song that I've never ever used in a song before. I mean, one time, on purpose, so I'm not going to write a song for a year with the word love in it. And I thought, because I want to push myself, I want to say that, but say it in different ways. And so I think it's a really good thought is, make sure you're in different situations, even silly little things. I mean, this is something I read Peter Gabriel did, and I started doing it, and it works. Sometimes we'll be songwriting, and then we'll record the little voice note or whatever of the song, and we'll go for a drive, and we'll hear it in the car, and we're chatting, and we'll put it on a couple of times, and you just hear the song differently. You come up with different ideas. I don't know why that is, but it is. I mean, this is maybe a little too revealing, but there's something weird about when your brain's only paying half attention to it, and sometimes you're sitting in that room, what is that line or this thing, and you would not believe the number of times I've gone to have a little pee, and then you get the idea. So you've been sitting there for 3 hours, drinking water, and then you're like, okay, I really need to go. And you go, and then suddenly, I swear to you, it happened too many times. And then I read this article, and it said there's something about the creative brain where when it's only half concentrating, something else can happen. And it's the same thing, you're just putting yourself in different scenarios. And if that's too much information for anyone, I apologise, but I'm just trying to help you. So.
It's amazing. Joel, do you want to add to that? How do you start writing songs?
Yeah, I started in the toilet as well. You're from the inside out, actually, with the song. Yeah, Okay, we'll stop now.
No reason to hide it?
Okay, well, I don't think there's... Yeah, anyway.
I don't think there's no right or wrong way, and I think, I think what Matt said was just is the absolute truth. I think you said a lot of the songs I think about were set before there was even an idea. There was maybe a desire for something that would be different or that's unlike something we've done before, and it just helps to give framework because there's no end to the possibilities when it comes to the creative process. And I think sometimes the best way to explore new horizons is actually to give yourself a framework to work within, and that's actually it's a weird paradoxical way of breaking the box. And I think most good ideas I have are just probably the best mistakes I've made, when it comes to trying to achieve something or write something, and it's really good.
Wow. Maybe a question for both Tim and Reuben. How do you know when that you found a great idea, an awesome? Because we all want to write the awesome songs, not only the average songs. So how do you know that you found a great idea? And do you have any examples on ideas or in songs that you haven't felt so good about, but then when you started to craft them, they actually went to one of the best songs you've ever done?
Yeah, it's a good question, and a hard question at the same time, because the more I do it, I think the less I know what's going to work and what's going to really fly, what's going to connect, and I can really love a song and it doesn't go the way I think it should or whatever, and then there can be other songs, for example, like Cornerstone. I knew it was a good song, and I knew it all hung together and there was something kind of special on it, but to be honest, I thought it would sit on an acoustic project, which is actually where we recorded it. We're going to record it first, as a bit of a tribute to a hymn. And so really the first time we did it was when we were recording our acoustic project. And when I heard it, and somebody else was leading it, and I heard it in soundcheck, kind of full like that, I was like, whoa, there's something different about this. And the thing about that song is it had just gone right to the bottom of about 20 lists, and really all of us had overlooked it, and it's just one of those ones that kind of made its way. But then I feel like most songs are like that, is that they kind of make a way for themselves, don't they? Tim?
Do you know, I found it really interesting since having kids. So we'll often, be writing songs and maybe get some demos and sort of, be playing them in the kitchen. I can think of the last couple of albums, my kids are all under 6, but they've always picked the big songs. Almost the songs that they naturally just start singing. And so if there's a chorus and I suddenly hear them singing it, I'm like, okay, that's encouraging, because there's something about a hooky, catchy melody which actually goes beyond age or, so I've actually started to really be acutely aware of what they're kind of latching onto. Because again, I guess sometimes what we're trying to do is songs of worship that we want people to sing along to. It's got to be something they can grab hold of it quick. So that's one thing I've found. Also, I think you're totally right. I remember, actually Matt, you're in this story, when I wrote Here I Am to Worship, I remember playing it to Matt, who was like...
Just in case I need to defend myself.
So I played it to Matt, this song, what do you think? And,
I don't remember any of this.
Yeah. You're like, oh. I think your exact words were, maybe it could be a little tag for the end of another song or something.
I think I also said it's not one of your best.
Yeah. There's quite a few things I remember. And again, I kind of, I wasn't so into it. So there's lots of other songs I was using before that. And then I just thought I'd try it in a ministry time, or end of a service where no one's really paying attention, and kind of, people started to latch onto it. And I thought, actually, there's something in this. So I think sometimes you've got to just try a song, see how it goes, and also give a song a few tries. Again, sometimes I think about if we're going to keep pioneering, pushing music forward and what people can latch onto in a church setting. They're so familiar to a certain style of songs, and actually sometimes if we're going to get to that new thing, you've got to cause a bit more offence and sort of unsettle people and give people time to really latch onto that new thing. So we don't want to just keep doing the same songs, same style, same genre. You want to keep pushing boundaries, and you've got to give people time to catch up with some of that. So it needs boldness. I think about a lot of the old hymns. There's this amazing article. This American journalist, pastor, slagging off these songs, this song, and these songwriters. They're lewd and loose. Could be united, couldn't it? They're money-making scam. The church has been singing these old songs and perfectly happy with all of those songs. We don't like what's coming through. And there was an American pastor, slating Isaac Watts, who wrote "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross" in 1723. So these hymn writers, many of them were kicked out of the church because it was so offensive they couldn't handle it. And I don't know. I wonder if enough of us are being ridiculed, thrown out of the church, causing offence. Maybe we need to be a bit more, even more edgy and risky.
Great. Does anyone want to add?
I would. Can I tell my version of that story?
We haven't got time.
How I remember it is, Tim played me this song, and I must admit I'm a terrible judge quite often, and I said, this is shameful. I said, it's a bit hymny. I don't think it's one of your best. And then Tim put it away for a few months. Then he played it to the pastor one time. The pastor's like, Mike Pilavachi, have you got any other stuff you want to play? And Tim was like, I've got this one thing. He goes, Tim, how long ago did you write this? 6 months ago. Why didn't you play this before? Oh, Matt said it wasn't very good. He grassed me up to my pastor, man. And that song probably went round the world faster than any other worship song I've ever seen. So that was amazing. And I nearly stopped that.
But you did help it, because you did take the...
Gracious man,
No,
Timothy
it's
Hughes.
true. No, it's true, but it's about... You might have all the elements, how the elements of a song hold together. It's huge. So I actually had the verse, and then the pre-chorus was that I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And Matt was like, why don't you flip that and have it as a kind of bridge tag at the end? So in terms of the flow, that makes a huge difference. So those bits are important to think through.
Great. On the back of that, just want to talk a little bit about crafting. And maybe Jared could start with this, because I know, like in the secular, you do a lot of secular producing and secular songwriting. I guess all of you guys are doing that, and that, I mean, you can spend months on a song and on a chorus and change 10 choruses or whatever. But for some reason, when it comes to worship songs, it seems like we're all praying and we just think the song is sort of going to drop, and then you don't want to craft it or change it because that would actually ruin the song or take away the holiness from the song or whatever. What's your take, and maybe some other you guys want to jump in on crafting and working and changing stuff on songs, worship songs?
Yeah, I find it, sorry to contradict, but I find it completely the opposite. Sorry, just my experience. In the pop world, you get 2 days with someone, maybe a day with, if you've never written with them before. And then the next morning, the A&R guy will want to hear what you did. And if it's not a hit, they'll never call you again. And there's no chance to go back. There's no chance to create. But when I started writing with Reuben not too long ago, I found it very much, and maybe it's just Reuben the way he does, he will never, ever, 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 ever give up. And I think it's something that I think I've learned a lot from, and I found my little team when I do the pop stuff. Talking about co-writing, I think found people that I can trust, that they're not going to shoot you down, or they're not going to think you're crazy if you say we need to keep working on it. But my experience in the church world is that there is a heart, and maybe it's Hillsong, there's a massive heart for reworking. And we kind of go, and sometimes, you go as far as you can until you just want to never hear the song again. And if it's not great then, well then we just, how about we start another idea? But like I said, I've contradicted, but there's nothing better than reworking a song, like trying to think of how, and we'll be, texting each other at 1 in the morning going, what about if we change that word to that? It's the kind of like, it gets right down to nitty-gritty things. And I think the secular could learn a lot from it, but I think that's probably reserved for the, once you've found it. I know that Dr. Luke and Max Martin and all those people, they'll spend weeks on a song. So it's, Max Martin spends 2 days on a pre-chorus, then he'll shut the door and go, right, see you tomorrow, we'll start on the chorus. That's the stories that go around. So they do, there's a lot of craft.
Want to jump in on that?
It was just interesting hearing you say that, because I was just thinking, I think we've made a meal of dressing up tons of songs, or at least I have personally. I think about it now, when I hear stuff back, I'm like, that song didn't need that, or it needed something different. And at the end of the day, I think the goal is always to make sure that whatever the song is allowed to be honest, you know, and it's allowed to be. Perhaps the metaphor or the picture, if it's not too revealing, that would be like if I was to try on Matt's clothes, you know, as a song. If I was a song and I was wearing Matt's clothes or vice versa, it just doesn't really fit. And I think sometimes we've got in our head, because we've seen something work in another song or in another way, I'm going to take those clothes, I'm going to put that on this idea, and it should do the same thing. And it doesn't fit. You don't know why it doesn't look right, or doesn't sound right, or doesn't have the same effect. And so I think, you know, we're in the process at the moment of working on a new album, and it's really, you know, been a process of using all the tools and all the options and trying different things, and just understanding, like Tim was referring to before. I think with a song, you have all the elements, but there's an emotion that's attached to it. At least for me as a songwriter, I don't necessarily know what the song's going to say lyrically, what all the hooks are going to be, what the guitar line's going to be, what the drum beat's going to be. But I know there's an emotion. There's a moment where it sounds like it feels in my heart when I close my eyes and I imagine what that is going to be. And so the process then, all the bells and whistles and all the layers and all the stuff we put on it, is a process of getting everything to work and create that feeling. And I think, I wonder how many songs I've had that I dressed them up too fast, or I was okay with it too quick and let them go, that couldn't have been more. And I hear it now, I hear a song, I'm like, man, that really was a great pre-chorus. I wish I'd spent more time on the lyric, or I wish I'd given more value to, you know, how we produced that or whatever. So there's no like distinct formula or answer. I guess what I'm saying is, don't sell your like, search for that honest moment where it's like more than, you know, how wonderful can I make this look?
Amazing. So we got 20 more minutes, and we're gonna change topic a little bit. Start talking about worship leading, and I actually think Taya should start talking about this. How do you go about finding your own style or your own identity as a worship leader? And do you reckon that's important to do? You know, to have your own style, your own identity as a worship leader.
Hello. I definitely think that's so important, because I will never be able to worship lead like Joel, and I'll never be able to worship lead like Reuben, and that's okay, because I'm not called to be them. And I think there's something special when someone steps out and starts leading from a place where they have their revelation of who Jesus is, because it's different from anybody else's revelation. And I think we're all different, so you're going to be encouraged, not every single person, but there will be people in here that will be encouraged by Joel's leading more than they would by Reuben's, or more by Reuben's than they would by Joel's, or, you know, just by everyone, because maybe like different experiences that you've been through, and then something that where we lead from, like you've been in that same place and that resonates with you. And I think that as well, like it really comes from your relationship with Jesus. I love that I've seen people when they lead worship, you look at them and you're like, something's changed, and you've just had maybe like a deeper revelation of who Jesus is just in the last week. And they lead from a different place, and there's a different anointing on it, and there's something fresh. And the cool thing is, like, everyone needs that from you. And you're going to go to a different place than I would go to. And when you've been given like that authority and that platform by our pastors, like, I think that's a responsibility that we have, that we all need to be digging in for our own relationships about that, if that makes sense.
That's amazing. So good. Tim, do you want to jump in on this as well? Do you want to share like how you started to lead worship and find your own style?
Yeah, I think for me, I remember I was 11 years old and I went into this kind of conference called New Wine, and it was about 1,000 people in this big kind of like a tent thing, and I was just so struck by a sense of God's presence. I didn't have the vocabulary to articulate perhaps what was going on, but I'd been going to church all my life, and I believed in God, but suddenly seeing people singing not just about God, this sort of distant deity, but singing to someone they knew and they were passionate about, and it just blew me away. And I remember going home from that camp saying to my parents, I want to learn the guitar, and I want to start worship, just worshipping, and so they signed me up for violin lessons. So not quite what I had in mind, but let's give it a go. So after about 3 months, quit that, and then eventually would learn the guitar, and I just spend hours in my room worshipping. You know, probably annoying the heck out of my family. But it's like, for me, it was so much part of my falling in love with God and just encountering Him and in that place, pouring out my heart and learning what it means to be a son and a follower and a worshipper. And it's like I look back and sometimes I wish, I think one of the challenges as you grow older is to maintain that kind of passion and that intimacy and that innocence even. And but I just think there's stuff God deposited in my heart in those years that I'm kind of living out of for the last 15, 20 years. And so, you know, I always say for anyone sort of starting out leading worship, don't try and fast forward the process. Don't desire the stage or the platform. You know, I think my favourite definition of leading worship is taking a private cry and making it public. And sometimes when you're working for a church, leading worship, all the busyness, rotas, plans, travel, all of that stuff, the amount of private times you're spending just before God can get squeezed out. And that's a challenge to keep space. For me, again, I felt really convicted a couple of years ago that how much time am I just spending on my own, pouring out my heart, worshipping away, and sort of really trying to be disciplined and creative and carving out that time, because we outwork that when we step up to lead, and there's something authentic and beautiful in it. So I guess that's the journey I've been on.
That's great. Joel, I feel like we need to hear your story as well. How do you, was it always obvious for you?
No, mine was quite different to Tim's. Well, not really. I think for me, I was talking to Brian Johnson the other night, and it was funny because we were talking, he's had voice problems. I think that sometimes, I'm not going too left track, I can be like, I realise I've been a really bad steward of what maybe God's given me to do, because I've never had voice lessons, and I've always talked about it and been told I should. And I've never, like, there's a whole lot of things that I haven't done well, and it's why I'm here. And it's because I've always kind of felt like I'm only going to be doing this for a little bit longer. And I was really challenged by it, again, because I thought that the first time I ever led worship, I thought it would be the only time I would lead worship. And basically Phil Dooley, I basically think there was just nobody else. So there was no like calling, like it was just, I think Phil, who was our youth pastor, was like, look, I'm going to ask Joel to do it. He said, I'm going to ask you to do something, you have to say yes. And so I was trying to be an obedient young man, would serve my youth pastor. I said, sure. And I expected him to ask me to like mow his lawns or to, I don't know, take care of some kid at church or something. And he said, I want you to lead worship at summer camp. And I freaked out. And I remember just going, okay, well, all right, I'll do this one time. I was full of so much anxiety and whatever else. I spent the whole night trying to learn how to remind myself how to play guitar, because I was playing bass guitar at the time. And I sung Breathe, you know, this is the air I breathe. And I just sung it for ages. And it was awful, but God moved anyway. And you know, I remember thinking, that was terrible, that was absolutely shocking. And then, you know, I think Reuben was like, hey, do you want to lead with me on Sunday? And I was like, well, I mean, sure. I thought that'd be the last time. And I remember thinking it was awful. I think I sung Here I Am to Worship, Tim, and I made an absolute meal of it. And but God moved anyway. And I feel like that's kind of been my journey now. I've accepted it much more, and I learned to love it. But there's definitely always been a reluctance there. You know, just with, I understand that God's called me to do it now, I accept that. But I still step into those moments and just really grateful that God would use someone like me to do what he wants to do. And I think, yeah, God's grace, like my story is definitely but by the grace of God. I for the longest time thought I only led worship because my dad was the pastor and he must have told everybody, like Darlene and that, get Joel to lead worship. It's not the case. He was like the opposite of that. And he was a bit embarrassed that I was leading worship. And I'm like, how did I end up here? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And to still be doing it. And I'm really grateful for the whole thing, but the flip side of grace is you can take it for granted, can't you? And so the challenge for me, I guess, the reminder is, I want to be a great steward of this opportunity. And you know, self-awareness is such an interesting thing, because I think about some worship leaders, they're just completely not self-aware. They get being selfless, or like whatever, they confuse it for a lack of self-awareness, where they actually then just become distracting or whatever else. And I always want to make sure I land in that place where I understand that God's got me here for a reason, but that reason is not me. And I think the best worship leaders, they don't strive, and I've definitely made a meal of striving way too many times. Sheep don't strive. How good was that? I love that. I think that's how we're called to be, but we're also called to be great stewards and to be shepherds and to take the moment and all of those things. There's so many paradoxes in leading worship that's the only way it makes sense to me. And so that's the way I see it. That's the way I think about it. And at the end of the day, I think as long as my heart is in a place where I'm just reminded that God, it's all about Jesus, then there's one thing I wanted to say and I just got confused. But anyway, I'll leave it there. I've talked way too much. But what was your question again?
So you started to lead where he was an ultimate. It was a great answer.
Self-awareness.
So we're running out of time, but I'm going to ask all of you a quick question. So I want you all to just spend like a minute maximum on like what's the main thing? Like if you had to share one main point that you've learned, that you wish like a mentor or someone else would have trained you, learned you, but you'll actually learn by trial and error, that you would like to share here today? Like one main point. You want to start? Matt, start.
I think for me, I like to ask myself sometimes when I led, what did I care about most that what just happened? Did I care about that went well and I did okay, or did I actually care about the glory of God? Do I care about the people? For me, it's a bit. I think most of us have a more of a thing with that one. Do we really have that shepherd's heart for the people? Did you really walk off and it went well, and one of your first thoughts was, wow, I'm really glad that these children of God met with him today. And for me, that's a good question to keep asking myself. When I come off, like, what I'm actually caring most about right now.
Yeah, me. Lately, it's honestly just been, I get really nervous, like I'll throw up before a lot. And so for me, it's just been like God's called me to be here, like I'm meant to be here, like people need me to be confident, they need me to be bold when I lead, so I have to remind myself that God's called me and he's with me and he's not going to forsake me, but he's here to help me through it all. That's one thing, so you have to get that through worship leader. Yeah.
I probably learned my biggest lesson maybe 40 minutes ago when my wife turned to me when we're sitting in the thing, and it was probably the biggest thing that impacted me, other than all the skill and the ability and all the crafting and all that stuff. She turned to me, she said, that's your mission, they're your mission, not your competition. And I think that was just so powerful, because in creativity, we can be a little bit naturally competitive. I want to write a better song than Joel. I want my song to be the title of the album, not Joel's, but I think that was just so powerful, and that was the biggest lesson I think I've ever learned. They're in the pop world, it's so competitive, but they're my mission, not my competition.
I think for me, the question I'm trying to ask when I lead worship is, what is God doing? What is God doing? Worship is a spiritual activity. It's what kind of sets it apart from being a rock concert. We're trying to see what God is doing amongst his people and to move in that, to step out in that. And that involves risk. It involves sometimes letting go a bit of the control, which can be a bit more uncomfortable. But I've seen, when we bless what God is doing, unbelievable things happen. But I think often what we do is we pray, God, bless what I'm doing. And we get the question the wrong way around. God, what are you blessing? I'm going to get involved in that. And then we'll see incredible breakthrough.
I had this great pastor when I first got saved in our Baptist church. His name was Alan Nunn. And he kind of discipled me for a while. And he said this one prayer, just don't ever forget this. He said, I can't, you can. Thank you, Lord. Amen. I'm like, oh, that sounds really like really kind of tacky, whatever, you know, put that on a bumper sticker. I can't, you can't, thank you, Lord, amen. I'm like, all right, I'll forget that, but I'll remember it. But as I've gone on, I realised I just really need that prayer, and that is my prayer. You know, when I step out of the door, you know, in the morning, I can't. You can, thank you, you know, because all the way through, kind of like what Joel was saying, you know, I feel like I've been thrown into this. I never asked to lead worship. Darlene asked me to lead, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to sing my song in front of the whole congregation. I wasn't up for it. I didn't even know writing worship songs was a thing that you do. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I was just thrown into it, and continue to be. And again, it's just that prayer. I can't. You can. And thank you, God.
That's great. Jenn?
I thought I got out of that one. Just two really small things. I think the first one is whatever season you're in, whether you're a worship leader or whether you're a co-leader or you're just up and coming, or you're a songwriter, we're all worshippers. And it's just good not to forget that, because that's what we're all meant to be, regardless of whatever platform we get. And the second is, for me, I just always have to prepare my heart before worship, because I can't lead people where I haven't gone before. And if I don't do that, like, I guess the other side of the coin is whether I prepare my heart or not, I've been put on a roster position. I have to lead worship, and I'd much rather lead worship from a place where I'm like, I've kind of asked God, maybe where do you want to go with this? Because I want to be leading from a true, honest place, and we've all been given that responsibility. And we, again, like what everyone's been saying, we have to be good stewards of it. So, and that's a challenge as well, because you can get caught up with the times, and you can get caught up with, you know, I've got to run to rehearse, I've got to do this, but like that's where, you know, you prepare your heart just at any moment, whether even if it's 5 minutes before it, like you just go to the toilet, you shut the door, and you just go, God, please, and you say that prayer that Reuben said as well. But just prepare your heart.
That's so good. John?
Yeah, so good. I mean, keeping with everything, I think just being reminded that the entire thing is just an entrustment. And being reminded that God's actually entrusted us. And that makes no sense whatsoever at times. But our job is just to be vessels and to allow God to work through us. And to me, that just takes all the pressure off. And I was laughing last night with Carl just afterwards, because he was like, man, I just didn't feel like it was connecting. I was like, bro, it was unbelievable. I said, stop thinking about yourself, man. You're the UPS guy. I'm like, that's right, I'm the UPS guy too. Like, we're just the guy who delivers, like, the package, you know? And at the end of the day, sometimes we get so concerned at, like, wondering, like, oh, man, talking about different UPS guys, and it's all about what God's given us to give. And to me, that's awesome. I've sucked so many times at leading worship, and God has moved anyway, that I've realised that this is cool. Like, there's no pressure anymore. I can just be a part of it, and I love that God entrusts us, and it's awesome. So
That's great. That's good.
Is that everybody?
Yeah, that's it.
Can we just thank these guys? And this has been